Hello and welcome to the Weekend Paycheck. We have a very interesting podcast here today for anybody who might be tuning in. A very dear friend of mine, one of my best friends actually, has agreed to join the podcast here. Very good salesperson for a payment processing company, Global Payments, is here to talk sales with us today and shoot the shit, drink a couple beers, and just have a good time. So, Austin Bouse, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Matt. Appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words.
I don't know actually how close we have to be with the mics here. You see, you're like, that's really loud. That'll be really loud.
Gotcha.
So I think we'll be okay.
So I can go and talk.
Also,
about it.
too, what we can do is increase the volume.
So I can talk at a distance.
Yeah.
It'll still pick up a clean audio.
Yeah, we can talk at a distance. I'm gonna turn mine up slightly as well. Usually it comes out pretty good, but I think it'll be okay.
Cool.
Anyways, for those who are listening and saw the cover of the podcast, the beautiful Weekend Paycheck cover with the paycheck, the dollar bills, the man behind it is sitting right here. Austin is the creator of our logo and cover. So thank you very much, Austin, for that beautiful cover.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun to do.
Absolutely, it is for sure. We have a topic here today we kind of want to talk about. That it was Austin's idea actually, and I think is a great idea to kind of dive into here. I don't know so the topic ultimately is 5 sales success tips. We're going to dive pretty heavily into it here. He's come up with, I believe, 5 things. I have come up with 5 things, so we're going to kind of jump back and forth, with those, with each other. See if maybe we have some of the same things, or see if we have completely differing things. So, why don't you, first of all, Austin, before we do get into that, why don't you tell us about yourself? What is it? What do you do in sales? What is payment processing? And, I guess, how does your industry work?
Yeah, for sure. So my primary role at Global Payments is to sell technology partnerships. So Global Payments is a payment processing company. They can sell direct to mom and pop shops, direct to merchants where they're selling standalone point of sale solutions, standalone merchant accounts, the ability to accept credit cards. My role is a different division than that. I work primarily through technology partnerships. So it's my job to find software companies that make business management platforms for various industries. Could be automotive, could be vet, tax, could be dry cleaning. I mean, anything that you can think of, we'll have a software partner in that industry. I think it's around 60 plus different industries. So I'll essentially go to those software partners. I'll say, hey, Mr. Software Partner, I'd like to integrate my solution into your product so that your clients, your merchants, your users can accept credit cards directly through the business management platform. So one of the main value adds to do that is that it's another solution inside of that point of sale business management platform that those clients can have access to. It's under the same roof. So you don't have to have a payment processing system over here, a business management platform over here, and then have to manually reconcile the data from one to another. Now, you'll be able to accept the credit card payments directly within that platform. You won't have to manually enter any data at the end of the day. Any credit card sales that you do, any debit card sales that you do will automatically populate into that software. So there's no need to, like I said, manually pull that over. A benefit to the software company for doing this is that on every credit card transaction, there's a fee. So my company will take in that fee. Basically, Visa, MasterCard, and my company, they charge a fee for that merchant to accept credit cards, to give them the ability to accept credit cards. So with a software partner, if we do that integration, we will also share revenue on some of those fees. So they can monetize, a term called monetizing the payments within their software. So it gives them not only a better user experience for their clients, but it also pads their pockets a little bit more on a monthly basis, with the residuals being paid out on a monthly basis to them. And it's, depending on the size of the company, a very, very sizable line item on a software company's P&L, and it can have a really big impact if executed properly.
So ultimately, you're helping these people not only make payments but save money also, or make money. Is it an additional source of revenue rather than just cutting a cost for them?
Yeah, and we always joke that the payment industry is intentionally complex. There's so many players in the fintech.
Oh, it absolutely is. Everything you've run through there, I absorb maybe 30%.
Yeah, and I threw a lot out. That was a very long-winded answer, but Yeah, there's the software players in the payment world. There's the credit card companies. There's the card brands, But at a high level, I just give software companies the ability to accept credit card payments directly within their software. So this is a revenue generator for the software company. For the merchant, it's a time saver. It's a cost saver. It could potentially help them cut down on labor hours. So there's a few layers. There's the merchant, which is the person that the cardholder is going to go to buy, could be buy a hat, buy a pair of shoes. That's the merchant. Could be Marshall's, Dick's Sporting Goods. Could be a restaurant you go buy a steak at. Could be anything that a consumer will swipe their credit card at. That's the merchant. Mm-hmm. That merchant has a software that runs their business. They have the point of sale computer. They have a business management platform that manages inventory, orders, labor hours, anything you think of, time and attendance, anything they need to run their business. Now that platform is my client.
Okay.
So I sell to that client a software integration, a payment integration. So now they can essentially have a new feature.
And then from there, it disperses out to the individual merchants.
Right. So we build that together. I have to build that. I have to sell that to the software company, sell them why they should take the time and the development dollars to integrate this solution into their platform. And then once it's built, we have this shiny new product. And we need to take that product and say, okay, now I have 4,000 clients, let's say. I'm the software company. I have 4,000 clients. I have this new feature in my software. So now I have to get everybody to use it. So I have to have either teams in my own company to call out to those merchants and my clients and say, hey, would you like to activate this new feature? Or we can assist with that as well. But yes, it's to the software integration, then they have to sell it then to their clients too. So there's a couple layers there.
Gotcha. Okay. And do you find that typically the merchants or the users of that extra integration for that software company that you're selling to, do they typically bring those things on board? Is there any additional cost or reason why they wouldn't want to do that, essentially?
So there was a point when credit card payments were a new thing. Obviously, they're everywhere now, and it's a common thing. At one point, having a payment integration into a software was a shiny new thing, and now it's becoming kind of commonplace. So being able to differentiate between me and my competition has become increasingly difficult because a lot of these software companies already do have it. So to answer your question directly, most of the people I talk to already have the payment integration. So the question is not necessarily should you do it, it's why should I do something different than I'm already doing now? Mm. And there are tons and tons of different payment companies out there. There's a handful of companies for to keep it at a high level. There's only a handful of companies that really own all of their direct technology. There's thousands of resellers of payment companies that have to pay third-party fees to use other companies' technology. So I'm fortunate enough to work at Global Payments, which is what we call a single source provider, which just means in layman's terms, we own all of our technology, so we don't have to outsource anything. We don't have to pay any third-party fees for any piece of our technology. So as a result of that, we have very, very low overhead cost. Okay. So that's one big differentiator for us compared to some other companies that we run into a lot, some of the smaller shops out there. Another one would be the ability to monetize those payments, even though they have an integrated solution. Again, it doesn't mean that everybody has to use it. There's businesses that still have a disparate solution for processing credit cards. That example I gave you earlier.
What does disparate mean?
Two different, separate completely. Okay. They don't communicate together at all.
My vocabulary is very limited.
No, that was a big term. Yeah, that's big for me too. But
well, I feel like you're like Tyler, our friend Tyler, who always throws out these crazy words. And in college, he used to win arguments by throwing out words that I didn't understand.
And I was the same way too. I'm like, I don't know how to respond because that was a very, very educated response. And
he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah, so...
sorry to throw you off on that point as well.
No, that's okay. So to get people to use it, you have to have the proper resources too. And there's a lot we could go into with this. It's like I said earlier, a complex ecosystem. But essentially, find a provider that can give you the technology without a whole lot of overhead costs and unnecessary fees, because that'll in turn go downstream to your client. So... Yeah. You don't want to have a situation where you're price gouging your clients to accept credit cards. You want to make sure it's a fair experience for them. You're providing a good technology, a solid modern technology with text to pay and Apple Pay and email invoicing, things like that. Modern technology, so that's another kind of arrow in your quiver as well. And then resources and support. I mean, you'd be surprised how a lot of these software companies, which are called software ISVs, independent software vendors, they have a payment partnership, and the company they're partnered with just provides very subpar support. You know what I mean? So that's a big arrow in our quiver too, is that we have large support teams. So if they have a support inquiry or a problem, we're gonna resolve that or escalate it quickly to the tier 2, tier 3 support to make sure that it gets taken care of quickly. Because if there's a problem with credit card processing, it affects those businesses a lot because they can't accept payments,
which is critical.
It's critical.
And nobody carries cash anymore either. So it's like, if you can't accept that payment, it's not like somebody could just whip out a 20 in their 50 in their wallet or whatever, depending on what the merchant is.
Right.
You know, if you're like I know you deal with a lot of like car places too.
Yeah. Yep.
So you've worked with those integrations. So if that payment is not there and someone just put on tires or, you know, did some work to their car that's $1,000, $2,000, nobody has that kind of money to just walk around and pay for that, even if they had the cash on them to make a payment to buy a lollipop or a Snickers or whatever at a regular store. Absolutely.
People just don't do it. Yeah, and like you said, things are going cashless. And it's funny, when I first got into sales, I mean, I've been in sales now for a little over, I think, 6 years, maybe a little longer.
For your entire professional career, pretty much. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Since I got out of college, this is all I've done. And I never pictured getting into this game of fintech or credit card processing. So there was this whole world out there of software companies and payment processors that I didn't even think about before, but when you sit back and think about it, it really props up a lot of the things that consumers do. Because everybody swipes their credit cards now. Things are cashless. It's either paying with a bank account, it's paying with your credit card, paying with your phone now through Apple Pay or Android Pay. Like, that's how people pay now, and there's a whole world of software that backs that up, keeps it secure, and allows it to operate efficiently. So if a credit card processor goes down and somebody can't make that payment, that's a huge problem.
Are there any problem. I'm curious, are there any backup, is there, so they only work with one at a time, right? You only work with one, a software company only works with one of you at a time.
So you can work with multiple. There's typically one preferred. That's the most robust solution that you would offer. There's two things you can do if that happens. There's a feature called offline processing. So the payment device has a feature set in it that'll say, okay, if the Wi-Fi goes down or if internet goes down or for whatever reason the processor goes down, this will allow me to at least capture the data from this payment. It's not going to process yet.
It just processes later?
Right. It's just going to say, Johnny just paid $10 to me at 2:03 p.m. today. My device is going to remember that. And hopefully, if the solution's good enough, once those devices get up and running, the processor gets back up and running, it'll then charge the card. So at least you don't have to say okay, just, we can't do the transaction and or you don't have to say, okay, you need to wait here while I figure this out. You can just take the card, not interrupt the consumer workflow, and let them leave with their product, and then hopefully you get your money later.
Gotcha.
The second one is just to have a second solution where you just have a brick terminal sitting in under your desk that's not integrated to your solution.
Yeah.
You can pull out you got it from your bank, and worst case scenario, you have to accept that, and it's a completely different setup, but at least your company is capturing the revenue.
Yeah.
That's not the recommended path. It's the offline processing capability.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, one place that happens a lot is sporting venues, arenas, concert venues, because sometimes the Wi-Fi in those places, you got to think there's some of those have 400 or 500 devices, and there's a lot of brick walls and stuff. Sometimes the Wi-Fi goes down or whatever, and in those scenarios, there are hundreds of thousands or hundreds, if not thousands, of little micro transactions happening over the course of a big sporting event or whatever, for $5, $10 for beer, food, little things. So if that goes down, you got a bunch of people who can't buy their second or third beer while they're watching the game that they go to once every 2 years.
They're going to be pissed.
They're going to be really pissed off. Yeah. So offline processing, that's an example of where that's pivotal.
And they're already pissed off at the $9 beer that they're buying in the first place. But
it's too expensive, right? Yeah.
If you go to a game, you're not even thinking about it. You're just I want that beer.
Yeah. You're going to pre-game it with a couple, and you're going to get there. You're going to spend $40 on 2 beers, and you're going to be happy as a pig in shit. Yeah.
Which we'll be doing soon at the Canes games.
Absolutely, I know, man. They're a really good team. They haven't always been good too. It's funny. They're one of the best teams in hockey. And when I first moved down south, I wouldn't I wouldn't have guessed that the Canes would be as good as they are, but they're solid.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that either, but I don't know anything about hockey. Hopefully soon, one day. But you said in there, you said something about discussing with these people or giving them a reason or making them understand why they should do something different than they're doing right now, which ultimately at its fundamental level is just sales. That's just the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, leading into that, I do want to get into these 5 steps here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to get into these 5 steps here for sure. I think it'd be cool to just kind of go one on. Do you have them listed in any sort of order?
I think they can be talked about in any order, really. And obviously, there's tons of little micro skills you need in sales. But I tried to break down 5 ones that I think are foundational. I think 3 of them are soft skills. Like just intangible skills. And then 2 are like more hard kind of sales specific skills that are more of kind of a craft. Whereas the other 3 are kind of just, like I said, soft skills that you should develop just as a person that help you as a sales professional.
Right.
Yeah.
What is your first one on the list?
First one, so this is something we've talked about before when we discussed sales.
Yeah, we've probably talked about all this stuff, yeah.
Absolutely, and it's don't take things too personal in sales. I think that it's really easy to conflate a rejection or a failure in your craft or sales, especially in something where you're like putting yourself out there in new situations. You're talking to people. You're the front line. You know what I mean? You're making a contact. They're talking to you. And sometimes rejection is difficult to deal with. And we know that you have to learn how to deal with that in sales because it comes up all the time. And it's important not to take it personal. So they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting a salesperson that hasn't taken the time to show them the value, to understand their problems, their goals, their fears of the future, those things. And simply a salesperson, they just don't trust yet. So when you get rejection, it's not you're not being rejected as a human being. You're being rejected as a salesperson, and you shouldn't conflate those two. I think a lot of people get discouraged from sales because they hear all this, they feel all these negative emotions, but when you realize that they don't know anything about you.
They don't know.
A lot of times they might not want to know. They want to know what you're offering them, how you can help their problems, depending on the industry especially. I think there's other types of B2C sales that may be a little more personal than other types of software sales, enterprise level sales. There's a spectrum, but I think the gist of it is just that they want to know how you can help them. Do you understand their problems? Are you taking the time to show them that you care?
Right.
And if they reject you, they're not rejecting you as a person. They're rejecting your craft. And you need to figure out how to evaluate and be better for the next time and stay motivated to take that as an opportunity to say, okay, this was really great because I know I'm going to have plenty more opportunities to talk. So I'm glad that I failed here because I know what I did wrong. Right. And I can genuinely see how to make it better for the next time. So I'm kind of grateful for that. And I don't take it personal.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point as well. I saw this video. I can't remember what the guy's name is, but he's like a sales guy that you see. He's got a bunch of snippets online and all that stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things he said that I think is a really cool way to look at this is because it's all basically, that's what they call like the numbers game. It's how many no's are you going to get until you get that yes. And any call that you make or any, meeting that you have could potentially be that next yes behind the sea of no's that you just got.
Right.
So if I told you that it's going to take you, like if you're, let's just say like a real estate agent or something, or you're a payment processing person and you're like, if I told you as a fact, like you are 20 no's away from getting your yes, and that 21st one, you'll get a yes. Obviously you don't know what that number is going to be, but how quickly would you want to get those 20 no's out of the way? You would be ecstatic to do it. You would like hurry to do it to get to the yes.
Yep.
So not knowing it obviously is the difficulty and the problem with it, but just sticking with it and doing it. And eventually you kind of just like build up this, I don't want to say immunity, but it's like anything else where it's like a muscle where you just get used to people saying no, and then you're like, yeah, it's just part of the business. I just got to keep rocking and rolling with it. So that leads nicely into my number one thing, which kind of goes for anything, is consistency. Mm-hmm. Doing anything for a couple months or even a month or whatever, and then stopping because you don't see any results. Yeah. Because you're getting those no's and you're taking it personally, and you'll get bogged down and won't want to really continue doing it, because it can be very difficult, especially if you're in a long sales cycle like I know you are.
Yeah, very long. I mean, 6 months to. I mean, I've had one that lasted 18 months.
Yeah, and I know. For you as well, you've spoken about earlier in your career in payment processing, and you sold real estate before too, so that's a very long sales cycle. I sold commercial real estate. That is a very long sales cycle.
Right, those are really large, complex deals.
Yeah, like
a lot of components.
They're good, a lot of components, and it's similar to that with you, where when you're in, and I know you've spoken about this too. So earlier in your career in payment processing, it was. I know you would sometimes get frustrated because maybe you're cutting your teeth, you're out there, you're doing what you need to do, you're grinding, you're trusting the process, but those results aren't so immediate. So sometimes, as any rational person would do, you'll question it or you'll get frustrated or you're like, man, maybe there's something else I can do or whatever. Not that you were looking elsewhere, but there's all those things.
No, you definitely get negative thoughts, and yeah, it's the very normal human thing to do, especially because the consistency is huge, and you operate in this notion of building a plan, trusting that plan, and kind of just having faith in it, making little adjustments along the way, but you're still going to stay on that plan. But every once in a while, you're like, maybe I need to course correct and completely try something new.
Yeah.
But it's funny when you get to that point too. A lot of times, that's when you have your breakthrough. Like, I just got another deal,
right.
And that one deal is enough. Now you look back in the last 4 weeks of just grinding it out, just dealing with the suck of it, and then you get that one deal, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna do that again.
Yeah.
And then the more experience you get, you start to understand that your numbers, like you said about 20 no's, you'll start to understand those personally. Like, I know for a fact that like every 50 people I talk to, I'll get let's say cold prospect. Every 50 cold touch points I send out, I'll get 10 people to respond. I'll get 3 people to agree to a phone call with me, a meaningful phone call or a meeting with me, and then 1 or 2 of those 3 will sign.
It gives you a good sample size to then gauge those metrics so you're okay, and it's not just that the whole system doesn't work. Because I think because in sales, there's a lot of people I've met that like to say it's like entrepreneurial, and I think to an extent it kind of is.
Yeah.
At least similar.
I think so.
There's a point, or at least every person has their point where they're like, okay, this is not working. I got to give up and start something else. And there's also the other end of the spectrum where it's like it's just not working, but you just know you want it to so badly, but the market is telling you that it just isn't working, and you should basically bring it behind the barn and shoot it in the back of the head kind of thing. So I think that's very important, and a lot of salespeople, there's confidence in there, and they'll have that availability to, I guess, be a little bit more confident in trusting that, or being in the later end of the spectrum, wanting that thing to work. Those are the ones that really succeed because you stuck with it, and now it's paying for you, which is phenomenal. So that's definitely important as well. What's your number 2?
Number 2, it goes along the lines of what we're already talking about, but
sure.
Time management and organization. I see people fail because they can't manage their time effectively, and a lot of sales is to the point about it being entrepreneurial. It's very much so like you're running your own business. Just your products are a company's products. Like, you're not. It's running your own business without having to stand up your own LLC, figure out what you want to sell. It's like you're with a good setup where you're giving full autonomy. You're pretty much running your own business. You're selling your company's products. Your compensation is based on your performance. If you're performing, nobody's going to say anything about how you need to do things, so on and so forth. This can be a really liberating thing. There's also some people who this is their detriment because somebody gives them too much freedom. They can't manage their time effectively. They're not doing their direct, they're not doing the activities that are going to produce results for them. They're taking too much time. They're not making their cold calls. They're not sending out campaigns. They're not building relationships. They're just not managing their time. So freedom can be a good thing and a bad thing. I think a lot of salespeople fail because they simply don't manage their time. They don't do their things, and a month goes by and they haven't closed or talked to anybody or had a meaningful conversation. It's because, in those instances, a lot of younger reps will get discouraged because they just don't know what to do, and a manager didn't step in and say, hey, this is how you should do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you get experience and you know how to manage your time effectively, it's obviously a lot of fun. And you get a lot of freedoms with that.
Oh, it's so much fun, dude.
A lot of flexibility, and as long as you're producing results, nobody's going to say anything to you. So Yeah, time management and organization is pivotal to being successful.
Yeah.
It's something you need to know how to do eventually. You need to know how to do that autonomously eventually, and that's, includes being proactive. I think obviously we all have a CRM of some sort. My company and we use Salesforce.
I use Salesforce too, actually. I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but yeah, we do.
I don't know.
Too.
Yeah, it's really customizable.
I was going to ask you about it, but I kept forgetting.
It's one of those softwares where you can use it in any industry, any product, any setup you want, because you can run any custom reports you want. You can customize the UI to be however you want it to be. That's why they're part of the reason they're so successful. It's just their ability to be flexible to whatever a company wants. And I use that a lot. I have a system for prospecting. I have a separate document that I use to track my key accounts as well, because I have accounts that are just superior to other accounts that I'm working. So I want to make sure for sure I'm not dropping the ball on those, because there's a lot of things going on, a lot of
prioritizing
tasks.
Those. Yeah.
So if I'm going to forget something, because every once in a while, it does happen. It does. When you're moving really fast, balls are going to drop sometimes, but I don't want it to be on one of my key accounts. You know what I mean? So I make sure those are buttoned up. So I have a separate document that I use to manage those. And just, again, being proactive, planning the priority tasks for the day, getting up early, getting ahead of things. That's all part of time management organization. That's pivotal for success.
For sure. So what does your typical day look like? So this is the thing too there's things I've seen in the past, at least I think the past year or so, where I've seen two different ways of thinking about things. One is being task oriented, and the other one is blocking off chunks of time during the day to do things. What do you typically do? What do you typically do?
So my mornings typically consist of checking emails, cleaning up my funnel. Like every morning, if not every morning, at least 3 to 4 days a week, I'm checking my funnel. Just making sure I have tabs on all of my big accounts. Which ones am I prospecting? Which ones am I in active conversations with? Which ones are reviewing contracts? Which ones are in technical review? Which ones are close to launch? Just kind of glance through that. I'll spend a half hour every morning doing that. Another, half hour or so just ballparking, emails and checking those. And then I'll usually have a morning meeting. Could be internal, could be with finance, could be with my underwriting team talking about some partner that I want to get approved and building a business case for that. And then typically the afternoons, I will talk to new prospects or have follow-up calls with prospects that are deeper in the sales cycle. So it could be a first call with somebody, could be a second or third call. It could be I talked to the technical contact last week, and now I need to talk to their finance contact this week to make sure that the whole executive board is kind of on board with the partnership. So it varies every day. I do like the idea of blocking off time, especially when you get busy. I think that's huge. So a lot of times what I'll do for sure is every week, this is a given, different days, different times, but I will always make sure that I block off prospecting time. Because it's really
you got to fill the pipeline.
Yeah, because
if you don't do that, a month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever down the line, you're gonna see that you haven't been doing that. Fill the pipeline.
Dries up.
Yeah,
it dries up.
It dries up.
And there's a term in sales. I love this term, getting fat and happy. And it's really easy to spend a lot of time fat and happy at the bottom of the funnel. You want to talk about, people talk about that all the time. Yeah. Experienced vets in the mortgage industry who just get fat and happy. They have their realtors and they have their builders or whatever that send them business, and all they do is do those loans, and they're barely even working 8 hours a day anymore because they don't need to. They're making well over 6 figures, a lot of them more, and they don't have to do those other things. But if they did, what would their compensation look like if they filled that additional time? Dude, getting fat and happy, which I guess is a good problem to have in sales. Yeah, but and it's part of the goal to a certain extent. Like
you're right.
We get into sales because we want to have financial freedom. I don't think I'll ever be a person who wants to retire completely, but it would be nice in the future to just have the freedom to just do whatever you want. You have the money to retire if you want to, but you can just find a passion project, start a company, do whatever.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in sales anyways, you're not one of those people that looks forward to not working.
No, you want to be a mover and a shaker.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have phone calls in the evenings and on the weekends. I know after this, I'm going to be talking to a client. I'm excited for that.
Nice. Yeah.
Great things like that. When you're in sales, you almost get kind of addicted to your craft. Yeah. So you don't ever really want to stop doing it. And most people that are in sales, They don't just want to like retire and sit there and do nothing. They'll go bored to absolute tears. They have to do something.
Competitive people, driven people,
Yes.
people who want to control their income, control the outcomes of their life. That's all, the best salespeople are that way. And I mean, it's great to get to a spot that you are fat and happy and you do have the luxury. But the way I look at it is, I like being fat and happy at the bottom, but also making sure I can continue to be that way by filling my funnel, because I don't want to just sign all these deals and then have to just start all over again. I want to keep the boulder rolling that is prospecting. It's tough to get started a lot of times, but once you
don't
get it
want
going,
to start from scratch again.
No, you don't.
Horrible.
And once you get it going, it's easier. Just
it's fun,
give
but
it a
it's
kick
you
every
don't
once
want
in a
to.
while. Yeah, for sure. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. Well, that's a great point. I do definitely like that. My number 2 is learning. I think that number 1, you have to be an absolute expert in whatever field you're in. I know you're an expert in payment processing. Every time we talk about it, dude, you blow my mind with all the stuff you talk about, and so little of it I can actually like follow along with. There's such a deep world, which is so interesting, because if you think about it, it's ultimately in the same space that I'm in, which is lending. Payment processing is lending. Not so much directly in your case, but you're setting up those integrations for that lending. Because every time someone buys someone with a credit card or a debit card, but most people use credit cards, they're all borrowing money.
So you're saying, when they're using their credit cards,
they're all borrowing money.
They're facilitating the lending process because they're using the credit that
exactly.
the bank gave it to them.
You're not directly a lender, but you are having those integrations in place for the lending to be taking place.
You're the one enabling the
borrowing and lending.
Yeah, the actual usage of that lending and credit and all that stuff. So interesting way to look at it.
I've thought about this for a while, because ultimately I don't think we're in the same industry, of course, but like similar in that respect. I've always thought about that.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, movement of money is movement of money.
Yeah,
right?
no, for sure. It absolutely is, for sure. When you start to think of it as like not like money, in my opinion, is like a river that just flows. There's some flowing in. Like if you look at your personal P&L, my personal P&L, everyone has their own. There's money coming in and there's money going out, and it's just constantly flowing in this stream. By those ways of lending a lot of times as well. But I think learning is very important, because if you stop learning, you kind of die. There's always stuff to be learning about. I mean, there's different things with regulations for loan products that I have to be abreast of and aware of. And if I'm not doing that, I might miss something that could be a critical selling point for a potential client, or I won't be able to serve them as well. If you can't serve them as well, eventually some other salesperson down the line is going to be able to serve them better for you and ultimately take them. So I think learning not only about your specific industry, like the guidelines are great. Honestly, they bore me to tears. I'm just not one of those people. If I was interested in it, I'd be an underwriter. I'm not an underwriter. I'm a loan officer. I like going out, finding business, talking with clients directly, making their dreams of becoming a homeowner come true. That's where I'm at. I don't like getting into the nitty gritty of it, of like different guidelines and stuff. But of course, once you learn them, they don't change all that drastically. So you can usually follow them pretty well for years, and maybe 1 or 2 things change every now and again. But also learning, I think, is important for like, what's the current economic climate we're in, right? How does that service your industry? How does it service my industry? What does that mean for us? How do we have to adapt? Because ultimately, learning is adapting. If you're not learning, you're not filling yourself the information that you need in order to adapt and get better. Because if you don't, somebody else is going to. Yeah. And just how you came up as a salesperson, right? There are other people that are going to come up as a salesperson and try to get that business. And I think it goes hand in hand a little bit with being fat and happy.
Yeah, you got to continue to evolve. Yeah, and I mean, I'm an avid supporter of continuous self-development, and I'm a competitive person. I'm tough on myself. I want to be better, and I want to enjoy the process, but I think a big part of enjoying the process is doing those hard and difficult things to really see the other end of that and to really get to that next point in your career where it's very fulfilling. And I mean, to think about, other people coming up, the more you learn and educate yourself, you can reach back and help educate the next generation of reps too. Maybe lead your own team, which can start to make more income for you too, indirectly, where you hire people on your team because you have all the knowledge now to help them generate more. So you got like these foot soldiers working for you now to help you make money while you're still out doing your thing, and you're teaching them, and then the next they'll do the same thing in the future. So not only is it making you better, you can make other people better and then help build a business around that, all while making a difference. And I think that's huge too. And as you get older, I think you want to make more of a difference. When you're younger, I think it's more focused on just the money. And once you figure out how to make the money, you're like, okay, what's that next challenge? And the next challenge is typically, how can I inspire others to make money and be the best version of themselves too? So you got to be constantly evolving, reading. I mean, I read books on time management. I read books on payments,
a lot of books,
self-development books, spiritual books, things that I could help me make maybe a better writer. Anything that I need indirectly or directly to be better at my craft and be better at life, I want to read it because it's knowledge from people who were there before me. That's the way I look at it. And especially older people who write books, it's like they got 50, 60 years, some of them, on me. You know, it's like they have 56 years of life experience doing something very successful. I would be remiss not to read what they have to say. You know, like they're 60 years ahead of me. They have 60 years more of perspective than I do, and I want to soak as much of that up as I can.
And it's so easy when you're young. At least I had a good amount of this too. In my earlier 20s, I'd say, when I got into sales and I started doing well. I kind of like wouldn't dismiss. I was always coachable and learnable, and I always enjoyed it and that characteristic about me. But there was always a little voice in my head that's like, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And my God, when you're in your early 20s, you know absolutely nothing. And we're here in our late 20s. You're still, I don't know if you would consider it mid 20s, 27.
Getting close to late 20s.
You'll be 28 soon. I've been 28 for a while now, but
it's happening quickly.
Mid to later 20s. I think we've always been a little bit older in terms of the way our minds work. Yeah. So 30 is on the doorstep here. But when you're in your early 20s, it's kind of easy to think that, because in a sense you don't know what the hell you don't know. Like you don't
know the questions to ask.
Right. Yeah. Because of that, like, isn't it? There's some saying like, I don't know. I'm going to completely butcher this, but like people who are like dumb people think they're smart and smart people think they're dumb. I think it's because smart people know how much information there is and know how much more information there is to know. So it humbles them and they know, oh, I don't know everything or such a small portion of it. But like people who, I use the word dumb just to characterize it, but people who don't know much about a certain thing don't really have that grasp of how much information there is out there, and they think that they know all of it or are some expert in a topic because for whatever reason, yada yada, they learned a little bit about it, but they don't know that reach of knowledge. I think that is easy to fall into in your early 20s.
Yeah, and I think it's a dumb move to think you know everything.
For sure.
You can be really, really proficient at something. You can be really educated, smart, intelligent. But I think that it's you're putting yourself at a significant disadvantage if you think you know everything or you don't want to change. And if you're that way, you're certainly not going to grow anymore.
Yeah.
But if you're humble, and I like the saying, humility is a superpower. Somebody's humble, able to admit their mistakes, and that you can still be confident in yourself and confident in your craft and say, hey, I need to work on that part of my skill.
Yeah.
Or I made a mistake there. It's not something I typically do, but here's why I made it, and this is how I'm going to make it better in the future. That type of mindset, it's a superpower. People want to help you. And
yes, they do.
It just makes you look better. And like it's just how humans are, because we all make mistakes. And it's you don't want to fall into that trap of thinking you don't need to grow anymore, because you always do. And it doesn't have to be just professional. It could be in your personal lives and various things that you do. There's always room to grow up until the day you die. You're going to be trying to perfect that. Your humanity, which nobody ever reaches to, and
nobody ever will.
Not to get too philosophical in that rabbit hole there,
which is tragic in a sense, but also kind of
it's
cool.
part of the journey.
It's the same time.
That's how you know it's exciting, because you have up until the last breath you take, you're going to continue to try to grow, and that's life. Continue to be better, and you can't be better if you're not opening the doors to maybe there's a better way to do this, even though I'm doing it well now.
Dude, that's exactly why these hyper successful people, like so many people are like look at like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all these people with more money than God, and they're like, why wouldn't you just stop and go live on a beach somewhere? And that's why. That's why. Because it's not about the money. No, it's just about that.
That's a byproduct of living an effective life.
Yeah, the money is the byproduct. Yeah. Which most people, and if you're doing sales, I think sales, obviously, like money excites me. I love making money. It's very, very, very fun. I think it's such a fun time. But that's not, I don't wake up every morning. If I think about money, I think about investing. When I think about sales, I think about succeeding and doing what I'm doing, and then the money comes after it. Like, I don't think about how much money I'm going to make from a deal. I just want to succeed in getting that thing done. I want to win. And then the money comes after it. I don't even think about the money. Are you the same way?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it's money is a motivating factor in a lot of it. And I would look at deals and be like, this one, I'm going to make a lot more money than this one.
Yeah, well, it goes to prioritizing deals.
But it's, that process that you start to fall in love with. Because if your process sucks and you don't like your day-to-day, but you're making a decent wage on it all, like, that's going to get old quick. You can only keep that up for so long. And I don't think that you have to absolutely love what you do. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, love what you do and you'll be better at it than that. No, it's like, I think you should love the process of what you do. I think that can be translated into a lot of different industries. So find a job, find a craft that you can do in the way that you want to do with the habits that you want to build. But it doesn't necessarily have to be something you're specifically passionate about. For example, we both played baseball our whole lives.
There's only so much money we could make playing baseball.
But, right. Does that mean I need to go try to start a baseball company? No, but I can still take the discipline and the time management and the competitive nature of that, the process of that. And sure, maybe some camaraderie of it when you have a sales team meeting, which happens, twice a year. But, like you take some of those foundational skills and you can translate those to something that can allow you to make a good wage, take advantage of your competitive spirit, and search for that freedom that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all these really rich guys have, which is what a lot of people miss. They think it's money. They're after the freedom. Now they can do whatever they want to in their lives. They can take better chances, bigger risks, do these things because they have the freedom with the money. It's not just the money. It's the freedom that accompanies that. It's not just the money. That's what they have, and that's why they continue to work, because they have the freedom to do projects that they want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Imagine, because they're probably like, man, look at what I've done. What else could I do? Because they're thinking of their one life that they've been gifted.
Without a doubt.
What else can I do with this?
Yeah. Once it's up, it's up. I mean, keep maxing that out.
Yeah, for sure. What's your number 3?
Number 3 is a very important one, and I think this can be translated to just life in general, but empathetic listening. Taking the time to truly understand the other person. This is specifically important in sales because what I said earlier about building trust and rejection, the way to build trust is to listen empathetically. Stephen Covey, one of my favorite authors, he wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, foundational self-development, very spiritual book. Solid book.
What's the book called again?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Okay, I've definitely heard of it.
Yeah, solid book. Highly recommend it.
Your uncle mentioned this.
I'm sure.
Your uncle Lee mentioned this when we were... Also, he mentioned... Oh, there was another book that I was supposed to ask you for that I've been forgetting.
Ninja Selling.
Ninja Selling. Did he say this to you?
No, but you told me already, and I forgot to bring the book too. I should have brought it over.
Bad memory with some stuff.
We'll get it.
I mean, you live 10 minutes away, so...
Just pop by, yeah.
Yeah.
But he says, that people have a natural tendency to listen with the intent to reply as opposed to listening with the intent to understand. And you want to listen with the intent to understand. You don't want to be sitting there listening to your prospect and you're like, oh my God, like he's setting me up right here. I'm going to tell him all about my features and benefits. I can't wait to talk to him. I can't wait till he stops talking so that I can respond with like what I'm so excited
because I'm so excited about my stuff, my shit, what I can sell.
That's not going to work.
It's not what the point,
No, and that doesn't work in building relationships with people, period. People don't want to, like you always like somebody who asks a lot of questions and tries to understand you, because what do people want more than anything? To be understood and heard for what what they truly mean. You know what I mean? And truly being understood. Like you might say something, but like what you really mean is different. Taking the time to make sure you're both on the same page speaks volumes and will go a long way. So in sales, that's really, really important because you want to make sure you understand their pain points. You want to make sure you understand. And pain points is a generic term. I mean, it could mean goals. It could mean fears of the future. It could mean problems. It could mean, I'm a company employee. My company has goals, but I also have personal goals. Like I just had, you want to say, like, oh, maybe somebody had another kid or just bought a second property, and they're like, I need to make more money to help with that. That's a personal goal. Company goal, well, we need to implement a new, in my case, strategic payment partner. So this is what my company's looking for. But Austin, just so you know, this is what I'm looking for personally. So it's good to take the time to understand those things. You can build that relationship further. Don't forget you're both human beings who are trying to earn a living for themselves. And that's it's imperative.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, dude. That is the most important thing in sales, which leads to the best thing or the most important thing that you have as a salesperson at your disposal to, I would say, guide a conversation is a question. It's questions. That's the most important thing conversationally, the most powerful thing that we have at our disposal as salespeople, not only for ourselves, but for our prospects as well, for sure. Because then you're doing all those things. You're finding out those things about this individual. People love talking about what they do. People like talking about themselves. They get very excited in doing it. They do. So instead of like jamming your stuff down their neck before you know how you can actually help them, or before
you might not be able to.
You might not be able to.
Might not even be
and you're gonna run into so many people that you're like, all right, well, tip your cap, hope we see each other down the line, but it's just not a good fit right now. And that's great. That's respectable. And having that as a salesperson too, I think, is very important, because if you ever reach out to that person again, they know you're not going to be pushy. They want to have a conversation, and they know you want to have a conversation, and they know that you're interested in actually helping them rather than try to sell, like buy or die kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think especially in this world, we're getting away from that and the way the culture is going towards salespeople, because there's a negative connotation about salespeople, for sure.
Yeah, and in any industry, I think people are just becoming smarter. They have access to more information at their fingertips with their phones. They see things more on social media. So a lot of times people go in there to these meetings nowadays with a good idea of what they think they need. They might be really smart and know what they need. Sometimes that happens. More often than not, they think they need something specifically, and then you talk through it and you show them a different, more efficient way or a better way or whatever. But people are educated there, so you really want to make sure that you take the time to just understand them, understand why they think they need that, ask the questions, try to poke holes reasonably in there to make sure that it's a solid strategy for them. And I think this goes into one of my other tips here is qualifying your prospects, just talking about identifying
a need. It absolutely does, yeah. It goes right into that.
You want to get what we call get to the know as quickly as you can. Because you don't want to spend too much time on somebody that's not qualified. And when I go into an intro meeting with somebody, it's not a tone of, hi, this is awesome with Global Payments. I'm going to tell you all about what I can do for you.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, John, really nice to meet you. The goal of today's call is to learn more about you, your goals, what you're looking to accomplish, to see if there's a good mutual fit here. I do a fair share of qualifying my prospects too. It's got to be a good fit. I want to make sure that my solutions are good solutions for your problems and your goals, because it might not be. But, at first glance, the reason I wanted to talk today was because it looks like there's some things we may be able to help with, but I can't say for certain because I can't pretend to know your company, what you guys are doing, what are your initiatives.
And I won't know until we sit down and have a chat.
And it's as simple as that, right? I just need to talk to you about it first. And you want to make sure that you figure that out quickly so that you don't get down the line, spend weeks on it, and then realize it's not a good fit. And you just wasted all that time on something that could have been avoided.
Exactly. Get to the know as soon as possible, because if you get to that, even if that person does say no, you're saving yourself time to then move on to the next person.
Yeah.
So that's extremely valuable. As a salesperson, the most important commodity that you have at your disposal is time. Mm-hmm. You can't get more of it. So you got to maximize it. Get to that no as soon as possible, which gets you further on into that yes. It just gets those 20 yeses out of the way, or whatever we talked about. For sure. I'll do the same thing too with it. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, and in addition to people living at the bottom of the funnel and getting fat and happy like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain point where you're in the same industry for so long, you start to get really good at knowing who your ideal prospect is.
Yes.
So this is another fun thing about
sales. You start to form a niche too.
You do, and you start to understand that only so many of your activities will actually be income generating or productive activities for you. So you now start to actually work less because your systems are so efficient. You know who you're supposed to work with, who you're not supposed to work with, and what the process looks like. So you might be having less conversations, but you're having more meaningful, direct conversations with people who are not only more qualified, but probably bigger, going to make you more. And that happens too.
For sure.
So it starts to get into this cool little, I've been around the block for a while now. I have this big funnel, this big understanding of this knowledge and how to sell and how to do it effectively. And now I can spend more time doing other things, because I have a really efficient process now. So that's a really cool thing too. That takes time, and you have to earn your stripes with that one, but that definitely is a part of it too.
Yeah, that's some experienced vet shit right there. Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah. What were we? We were just talking about. What were we just saying right before that? That nice point that you made
Just
as well.
Qualifying prospects, getting to the know.
Yeah, I was
figuring
just
out
gonna
a
say.
fit. Yeah.
I'll do the same thing with real estate agents. Hey, if I cold call them up or whatever, or I meet them somewhere, and I'm trying to sit down with them and learn more about them to have a cup of coffee. Obviously, the end goal of that is I would like to be a lender, or ultimate goal is be the lender behind them, because I know that I'm going to be the best thing for them, for sure. I don't even care who else they're working with. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm going to be the best option for you in every way other than just one. But I want to make sure that I'm working with good people as well. I think that goes into qualifying those buyers realtors and prospects is like
relationships. I mean, anything that's going to be a business relationship for you needs to be qualified for your time.
It needs to be something that is going to benefit both of you, because it's easy for lenders specifically. And I don't know if this is something in the payment industry with your software companies that you work with, but with lenders, it's very easy to become someone who serves the agent. Instead of that, I want to have a partnership with an agent, and a partnership is equal. It's an equal thing. There's a lot of times lenders can fall into this rut of taking on bad business from a realtor that wastes their time and doesn't serve them, the client, or even the realtor very well. So even though that person is sending you business, sometimes you got to cut bait with that person.
Cut ties with that.
Yeah.
And it's. Do you think that happens more when you're younger, in the, let's say, newer,
like getting into that
greener? Yeah,
because when you're new,
why does it happen?
Because when you're new, you don't have much business, so you'll get anything you can find.
Yeah, right.
It's easy to fall.
Sometimes
into
you kind of have to. You don't know what
Yeah.
to look for, and you learn school of hard knocks type of thing, right?
School of hard
You
knocks.
go through, you're like, wow, now I know not to do that, or maybe sometimes you get lucky enough to have a mentor that works with you, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, don't do that, trust me.
Right.
And that sometimes can help, but it's nice to go out there and make your own mistakes on the stuff
For sure.
and learn, because when you get that negative feeling in your gut, it's like, all right, I'm not doing that again. Like, you got to feel it
Yeah.
for yourself sometimes, you know?
You do, dude.
Yeah.
Specifically, the way that you said that, I have to feel it for myself, because I've had this
Humans are
thought for
complex.
so long.
Yeah.
I've had this specific thought for so long, dude, and it leads directly into what we used to do, play baseball.
Right.
Where you can talk to somebody about something, and you can understand what they're saying, but you won't truly understand it until you physically feel whatever emotion it is in sales that like leads you to that. Or in baseball, it's kind of a better way to paint the picture. It's like a lot of coaches. You ever had like a coach or something, or like whatever, who's trying to fix your swing up, and they're saying something that doesn't make sense. A good example is at Lemoyne, thumb up. Thumb up to the public probably sounds dirty.
Talking about catching.
Yeah, we're talking about catching.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
because it's an ongoing joke that we have. Yeah, it's an ongoing joke that our friend group has. Thumb up.
Yeah.
With Mikey Miola. Love
Yeah.
him. I haven't talked to him in years. Too. I gotta give him a call. I should have been texting
Yeah,
something.
he's
But,
a good guy.
Thumb up, something like that. Or a specific one I have from high school. I used to take hitting lessons with Rich Gedman. You know who Rich Gedman is?
I don't.
Rich Gedman was when the ball went under Buckner's legs?
Yeah.
He was the catcher for the Sox during that year in that
no
game.
kidding.
So that's who
he's
Gedman was.
outshined by Buckner.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Rich Gedman, Red Sox fans know
Kind of
him.
middle of the pack, though.
Yeah. So I was in Worcester for a while taking lessons from him and stuff. And he would say things like, back, swing it to the front side. Which might not mean it's difficult to know what those phrases mean, but to him, there's a specific feeling behind that.
Oh, he knows exactly what that means and how it's
Right.
supposed to look.
He
but
knows exactly.
How you transfer that, you have to show somebody how to feel it.
Right. Yes. And that person has to take that thing like, what do these words mean?
Do it 100 times.
Yeah.
Before.
And then you'll feel it, and then they'll go, yes, that. How did that feel? And you're like, that felt really good. And they're like, okay. They don't say like, that's what I mean by saying this terminology. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it kind of is exactly the same thing in sales, because there's so many parallels between
baseball and sales are incredible. There's a book. You ever heard of Baseline Selling?
No. Do you have it? I'll steal it from you as well.
I do have it. And yes,
you do?
I love it. It's
so 2 books I need from you.
Yeah, and it's a.
How many books have you read? How many books did you read last year, too, by the way?
Oh, last year I read 12 books.
Dude, I read. You know how many books I read? I think I read a half of a book last year.
Really?
I
got into a groove with it, and I just like waking up early or really anytime. Sometimes even around lunchtime or whatever, I'll just read for 20 minutes.
Really?
Just to. It's almost meditative in a way. Just to disconnect a little bit, pick up a new piece of information. Just feels good. But the book is Baseline Selling, and not to digress too much, it's foundational in sales. It's not anything too in depth about the sales process, but it just relates everything to baseball and first base, meaning one
baseball
thing.
Specifically.
It's baseball specifically.
Wow. Okay.
First, second, third base, home run. What that process looks like, and how you really can't move from base to base until you qualify your prospects effectively to the tone of everything we're talking about. But yeah, good, really, really good book.
That's good. Yeah, I'll steal that from you. I'll steal that from you as well.
Yeah, enjoy it.
We are going so into depth with this 5 sales topics.
It's a great conversation. I mean, sales is it's simple in nature, but humans are complex, and sales is all about communicating with humans and managing those relationships effectively. So there's a lot of rabbit holes we could go into.
That's for dude, and we've been taking every advantage of it. I mean, I'm on number 3 on my list. I know we've been doing this for almost about an hour now. I know you got some stuff to do a little bit later, so
yeah, I'm good for now.
Okay, cool. So we'll just keep rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm having a very fun time. Usually my podcasts with just me, which are probably horribly boring, are usually like 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And this has been very, very fun. So I'm stoked that you're here today.
We're at 56 minutes.
We're at 56, yeah.
I'm reading this book now to talk about the book tone, and this could be a whole conversation itself. So I'm gonna keep this within 10 seconds.
Maybe we'll come. I would love to come back to another episode if you're down. Maybe within the next couple of weeks, and we'll dive further into a lot of
some
stuff.
of these things. Maybe even have a conversation about one specific thing.
Yeah.
That would be great. But this book just talks about time. He's a neuroscientist talking about making. It's called like the secret pulse of time. Making sense of
secret pulse of time.
Secret pulse of time. Making sense of, I think it's called life's scarcest commodity, time. And you just made me think of it because he talks about why does an hour go so fast when you're doing something that you enjoy versus it feels so long when you're standing in the DMV.
Yes.
It's just an interesting thought because we just
which is tragic, but you love it,
Yeah.
What if things that you love doing took longer than the things that were bored?
That would be great, wouldn't it?
That would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
But such is life.
That it is.
My number 3 thing on the list here is prospecting, and I thought of a good way to kind of lead it into what your number 3 was.
Okay.
But I do kind of forget what that thing is.
It's all right.
Unfortunately,
keep rolling. It'll come up.
So this number 3 here, prospecting. This to me means something that is, in my mind, there's kind of, in a sense, 2 types of salespeople, and it's a spectrum to everything. So you can be one end of it or the other, or any infinite number of in between things.
Like everything's just gray.
Yeah. So you're in between the spectrum somewhere. I'm some other point in the spectrum. It doesn't mean either one is better, but they're all different. 2 ends of the spectrum. In I think a good way to kind of describe this is like width and depth.
Okay.
Width being how many people you talk to, depth being how deep you get into each individual person.
Okay.
With me, the thing that excites me about sales, the thing that really, like, when I'm doing some arbitrary thing, going on a long drive, and my mind just starts racing about work and sales and all this fun stuff, the thing that always comes back to me, or the thing that excites me, is the prospecting side of it, or like width. What are different ways that I can like find new business, essentially? And I do. That doesn't mean that I don't get excited about the other end of the spectrum, which is like when I sit down one-on-one and it's game time and I got my cleats on and like we're on the field and we're playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love that point of it too.
You're in the field, you're ready to go.
Yeah,
that's what you
fun.
work for. Those ones
That's when the adrenaline goes. Yes,
that's what you work your days for. Those meetings that are so, I think they get easier to come by, but they're in the statistical viewpoint of it. They're the smallest percentage of what you do, but they're the most exciting.
For sure. Absolutely. For me, I know I've talked to you about a number of ideas that I have in various different industries that I've had that I've worked in with sales. And the thing that excites me is how many people can I effectively get in front of that are that can benefit from whatever I have, whatever service that I have to do. So I think a good tip for somebody that's in sales is recognize or maybe new to sales, is recognizing where they are in that spectrum and understanding that one or the other isn't best. Being in between somewhere is best. And it kind of maybe leads into an introvert extrovert sort of thing. Maybe, I don't know. That's probably a whole different conversation.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's again the same thing. I think people have introverted qualities. I think people have extroverted qualities, all under one roof. You know, I mean,
yeah.
Somebody could be 30-70, extroverted, introverted. Somebody could be 60-40, 50-50, whatever it may be. I think there's certain times where people are extroverted and certain times where people aren't. I mean, and it's just, you can't box. People are way too, there's too many components to people to box them off into one thing or another. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure.
There's a different approach depending on personality type. I mean, just whatever your medley of personality is, you're going to do something differently, but you have to find what works for you. And you have to do that consistently. You have to have a grit. You got to be resilient. You got to just trust the process.
Yeah.
Plant the seed in April, harvest that seed in September, and be patient for those 6-7 months. You got to work that plan.
Yeah, because it's not only it's finding people to talk to and then talking to those people in an effective way. Ultimately.
Which could be another podcast in itself, how to run a meeting.
It absolutely would, and I would love. I won't ask the question to you right now, but I would love to know any prospecting methods that you have for global payments. Maybe we can go into a different kind of avenue for that.
Yeah, that could be a whole call. I got a ton of stuff we could go through there. What I've fallen on my face doing, and what has been successful.
Because you could be on one end of the spectrum and find 1 million people to talk to, but if you get 0 meetings out of those 1 million people, it's not worth anything. Additionally, you could be on the complete other end of the spectrum and find one person to talk to and maybe close that one person.
Right.
And it just all varies off of width and then depth as well. Because
wouldn't you, that same, before you move on, I mean, wouldn't you rather have a list of 10 people or 10 prospects, 10 companies, whatever, that are really qualified and have 60 to 100 touch points within that 10, as opposed to getting that 60 to 100 touch points over the course of maybe, 40 prospects that you're not quite sure are a good fit for you. I'd rather take more time on people that I know would probably be a good fit and try to get meaningful conversations with them, as opposed to shotgun spraying it out there to the market, which the longer you're in any given market, you start to learn that stuff more. So that's an experience thing too. But I would rather spend more time with people who I pretty much know would be a good fit and get calls with them, as opposed to taking that same amount of effort but and spreading it out mile wide, inch deep. You know what I mean?
And I'll be completely honest with you too. I've been more excited about that portion of it. That's been what has been exciting me as of lately, specifically since I've been with Truist, to be honest with you. And which is interesting, because one of the reasons I wanted to be at Truist was because we can do business anywhere except for
resources, and that's all still going well for you, right? Like, everything's awesome there. You got a lot of resources.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Great team, right? I mean,
it's been absolutely amazing.
Good move.
It's been amazing.
That's awesome.
Love that I made the move. But one of the interesting things was my license right now. I can do business anywhere.
Any state
except for Arizona, Hawaii, and Alaska. Okay. Why Arizona? I have absolutely no idea. But regardless, that was one of the things, because I had that prospecting plan I was telling you about that actually, honestly, when I started doing it, when I got to go ahead to do it, the time to reward or meaningful conversations that it led to just wasn't worth it. At least that's what I found. So now I'm getting away from that, and during that, obviously, I've been doing the fundamentals of it, as any good salesperson should do, and having those meaningful conversations where I'm prioritizing depth for it, and it's been paying off very well as of recently, and it's been exciting me more. So that's
we're tracking there. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the shotgun spray can get it's monotonous, and sometimes when you're like, wow, I'm getting the same amount of phone calls, when they're actually less meaningful, when I could do more meaningful touch points and get better phone calls in the same volume. I could get the same amount. Why would I not do that?
I think what it means too is, like, I tested a thing that I'm realizing where maybe I thought I was further in one end of the spectrum. Maybe I'm further in the other as well. So I'm kind of finding, I guess, where the optimal place is by trial and error, essentially. Is that. So that was my number 3. What's your number 4?
So my number 4 was actually the qualified prospects to really get to the know, which we kind of rolled into that one.
My number 4
let's hear it.
is get out of your comfort zone. Gotta get out of your comfort zone, because if you're gonna go into sales, it's gonna be a very uncomfortable thing.
And what does that look like, right? What does get out of your comfort zone mean? Could mean a lot of things in sales.
Could mean a lot of
What's one of your
things.
first things that comes to mind, I guess, with sales? I'm curious.
Pick up the phone and call people.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people, we've touched on this, is they're going to say no. They're going to be like, yada, yada, oh, whatever. Like, you maybe get some people who,
Number one, don't take things personal.
Don't take things personally.
Nope.
It's not personal. They have no idea who you are. Which, when I was early on in sales and people would say no, or maybe they would even be upset that I called them, truly I had this feeling deep inside that was like, this person, I almost want to know this person, meet this person more, so that they learn about me, because they're unhappy with me, so clearly they don't know who I am.
I know.
Because I genuinely come from a good spot where...
It's a shitty feeling when you start getting rejection for the first time.
And they're like, oh, you're just some sleazy salesman. I'm like, no, I promise you. But they're just, maybe they're having a bad day too. Who knows?
Could be, or maybe it's just, people read too much into it and they're just completely dismissive and they're not thinking about you at all. They're just like, I don't have time, They could. That could be part of it.
They
too.
could, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, but yeah, it could be anything. And it sucks at first. It does. But you get over it, and the more successful you get, the more experience you get,
Dude, I remember there's this one time when I was selling real estate at Sutton in Syracuse, and I had a gas station that I had listed. And so naturally, I started calling up other gas stations to see if I could get to an owner and they would want to buy one.
Awesome, yeah.
So that's just the
you're getting data.
In my mind,
you're
it's like
intel. You're making it happen.
Call the people who own gas stations to buy a gas station. This one lady picked up, and she started being really shitty and asked me what my real estate license number was. I gave it to her, and she's like, if we want it, we'll call you. And hung up the phone. And I'm like, I didn't just call you like pitching some weird insurance thing or something. I called you asking if you wanted to buy a gas station that I have listed. Like, how many people do that?
Just brought you an opportunity. You might be interested in. Sorry, lady. Yeah, she was having a bad day.
I couldn't even believe it. And I was like, even if she wasn't, even if that's who her personality was, see ya, gone. You got to get out of my sight. I can't sit here and talk to a whole bunch of people who are crabby all day. It's gonna bring me down, man. Like, if you're crabby, just get out of my way. Honestly, like I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna continue my search, and I'm gonna find a whole bunch of good people that want to do business, and we will hold hands and walk into the sunset together.
And it's another parallel to baseball, just having a short-term memory. I mean,
that's true.
Growing up, this took a while to learn, because I would freaking go 0-for-4 and I'd think about it for 2 weeks. But
that's a good hurdle to cross too when you're young. Talk about being young and having to deal with failure, which is why I love baseball so much.
We got a lot of it really quickly.
My kids will play baseball even if they hate it. They're going to learn those lessons that it has to learn, that it has to teach you.
A lot of life lessons. It's a game. It's a game of failure, and you fail more than you win. And sales is also a game of failure.
Oh, yeah.
You fail way more than you win, but those wins, man, you do well. Really well. But yeah, once you learn how to get over that, and for some reason, I remember taking baseball, and more personally, I learned a lot from that. I think that's why when I got into sales, I kind of, the beginning was tougher, but I never took it as personally as I did baseball growing up, being younger, being a kid.
Right.
But because we did it so much, by the time I got into the real world with it, I was like, I know how to deal with all this stuff. It's not personal.
Yeah, you do take those lessons, and you're like,
and it's like, I'm out here to make a living, have financial, freedom in the future for myself. Just
Absolutely.
Right now, have the freedom to do what I want to with my time, pay my bills, buy nice things, do nice things, whatever. That's why I'm out here. And honestly, once you get successful at sales, like you're a professional, and half the time, whether they know it or not, you're probably financially better off than a lot of the people that you're talking to. Because if you're a high performing salesperson, you're going to be doing well. And obviously you never act like that, but that deep down. You're out there to care for your clients, but going into the meetings that, look, you're financially independent. You don't need this sale. That helps too. I don't need their approval.
That is
I'm there
important.
to help them with this. And if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. It's simple as that. And you just start to really understand that point of, it's not personal. Go out there, get the next one. There'll be more opportunities. There'll be more phone calls to make.
Yeah.
More sales to close.
There's always more.
Not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Just take a breath and move on.
There's always more. No, right. dude, absolutely. Additionally, other than like picking up the phone, I would say just like I don't know if this would necessarily. It's obviously very industry specific, but I don't know if it would work for you to just show up to somebody. But other than picking up the phone, like with like Truist, we do a lot of builder business, or especially around this area in the Triangle area in North Carolina.
Like working directly with builders to get that funnel or like because they're going to build houses, selling to people, so that you're going to be the preferred lender. Is that kind of how that works?
That's exactly what it is. They'll have a list of preferred lenders, or maybe one or two that they're like, okay, they work well because they want to know they have a quality lender behind who they're prospecting, because they can't afford for something to go wrong with a transaction, because they just built a whole bunch of stuff. They got to offload these things, get that revenue so that they can move on to the next project. Whereas an agent, it's like if something goes wrong, it's bad, but it's just not like the end of all days. Where with the builder, it's like you got to have good quality lenders behind you. But regardless, with builders, what I do and have been doing is just show up. Show up to a model home. There's sales agents that are in all
a new
those.
subdivision, you're saying, with the model home?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there'll be subdivisions that they're making, and maybe they're half complete, maybe they're almost done, maybe they haven't even built a single house yet, but they got the model home.
They do the model home first.
Okay. So they have a sales agent that's going to be there. I will just, and you can Google it. You just Google them. You'll be able to find them. I just show up, meet the person, drop a card, ask for their card. They have them show me around the home. They're going to show me around the model home. Strike a conversation with them. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. The one thing I'm not going to do is start pitching my loan products. No. What I want to do immediately is find out more about the builder, find out more about the community, find out more about them.
Their priority items.
Yes.
What are you looking to accomplish?
Who is that salesperson? Where do they live? How long have they been working with that builder? Have they been a real estate agent for a long time? How has business been? Like, what are all these different things?
And for all you know, before going in there, they could have a 5-year contract with a lending company. They're like, look, I would love to work with you, but we're handcuffed. I can't do it.
That's fine.
You can't do anything about that a lot of times, unfortunately.
That's fine.
And you don't want to pester them with your products and services. It's like, I just need to learn more about you, Yeah.
But there's always something. It's always like, and this gets into my point number 5, which I'm going to mention, and then we'll get to your point number 5, because we're bleeding into it so well, is like thinking about what sales actually is. Mm-hmm. Okay. What sales actually is, and I think a lot of people, when they think about sales, they think like, we had a very good friend that's close to us, and I won't mention, who mentioned to me a few years ago, how, like, because they were kind of in sales, not really. I'll mention it to you after the podcast, but they mentioned to me, like, how do you convince somebody to do it? And I'm like, you're thinking about it completely the wrong way.
You don't convince anybody.
Sales is not about sitting there and like being so good at talking that you convince somebody to do something that's not good for them.
This isn't, it's not snake oil sales.
It's not that.
We're not. We're think of us more as doctors trying to prescribe a problem.
Yes.
A solution to a problem.
Yeah, no, it really is.
It's not a persuasive presentation here.
And it comes off as that. And honestly, there's been however many like, phone salesmen, what do they call them? Telemarketers. And used car salesmen that are like, because they're like, if someone comes on the lot, they want them to leave with a car, so they're gonna do all that good stuff. But in my opinion, if you're in a good sales role, and I mean like a quality sales role, you and I, very relationship based, and we're not sitting there at some sort of call center trying to make a sale on the initial call. That's not how it's supposed to go.
No, you don't sell over the phone typically. No, and even a lot of jobs that do a lot of cold calls, your goal is not to sell on the phone. I bet those telemarketers, sure, they're trying to sell you a freaking subscription or whatever. Like those telemarketers,
something,
they're from
whatever
a different country, whatever it may be. But in a sales job where some companies have roles specifically dedicated to making the calls, and then you pass them off to the account executives to manage the actual deal. But like either way, your prospecting cold calls or whatever emails, any efforts in your prospecting efforts, the goal is to get a meeting. I'm not trying to sell you anything on the phone. You don't sell anything.
And I don't want to. Even if you were like, hey, what do you have to offer?
It doesn't
maybe
work.
I'll allude to it to kind of, maybe, but really all I want to do, and this comes to the other side of it too, which is like, I want to make sure I'm respecting their time, because the people that I want to do business with are doing business. like you want to do business with people that are doing business. Otherwise, if you're doing business with, if you're cold calling somebody that's not doing any business and has all the time in the world to meet with you, it's not necessarily a good thing. So you need to make sure that you're respecting their time and at the same time trying to get that meeting. So in a sense,
you got to get them the meeting. That's the number one goal, right?
Getting the meeting.
It's not selling. It's just showing enough insight or value or whatever to just say, like, I think there's reason for us to talk. I called you because I think there is. It sounds like in this 20, 30 second little exchange we've had here, maybe there's a reason. Let's just try to have that meeting.
Yeah.
Then we can talk about things.
So there's a small value add, at least enough to the point where you're like, it would be in your interest and mine, of course, to meet together, which is why I'm calling you today. During that meeting, we'll sit down, we'll be able to talk with one another and see how we might best be able to go about continuing this relationship.
Establish that mutual fit.
Exactly. Because to my fifth point here, thinking about what sales actually is not trying to sell somebody on the first call or do whatever. If you're in that kind of sales position and you respect sales and you think you're good at it, I would recommend getting out and finding a good quality sales role while you're building relationships. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, all that you and I are doing, Austin, is making friends.
Yeah.
We're making friends with people we can do business with.
And it's funny too, because if you look in the outside, I think a lot of people do think of sales as being that, they're just, I could never, people say like, I could never do sales or whatever. It's like, I'm not like persuasive enough or whatever. It's like a lot of sales is just being okay with putting yourself in new situations to try to have conversations. But those conversations are not based around talking anybody into anything. They're based around trying to understand one another and see if there's a mutual fit. Think about the pressure that's taken off the situation when you sit down with somebody and say, I'm just here to try to understand you and see if my solutions are a good fit for you. If you're the ideal person for me to work with, because I want to be respectful of your time and my time.
Right.
We both got things going on. I want to make sure that there's a strong mutual fit here. In no way, shape, or form am I sitting down and saying, I'm going to try to talk you into something here. Because if that were the tone, the first thing you do, whether it's something you want or not, is your walls go up and be like,
oh yeah, people put their gloves up.
I bet this guy's I'm not gonna let this guy talk me into anything. Watch this.
Screw him.
Watch this. Who does he think he is?
Yeah.
That's not sales at all.
It's not.
It's that with sales where people conflate that type of environment is with the initial prospecting effort where you're just trying to get a meeting. You're doing uncomfortable things. So sure, there's people who maybe wouldn't be comfortable doing that, pulling doors, making cold calls, cold emails, putting their names out there, doing things, just trying to establish new connections. Sure, maybe there's people that wouldn't be comfortable with that. But in any of that, there's no like hard persuasion at all.
No.
And honestly, objections and stuff, if you qualify your prospects, that could have been a part of this too. I was deciding if I wanted to put that
wasn't
in
that
there,
one of your points though? Qualifying prospects.
Qualifying prospects was, but like the objection handling, because people, there's objections.
I didn't even think of that either.
Time, budget, whatever. But if you're properly qualifying your prospect, you're not going to run into a lot of objections, because if you're a part of the qualification process is establishing that the person you're talking to can make a decision on something, establishing that they have the budget, establishing that they have the need, establishing that they have the time. All of these questions are a part of your qualification call, your discovery call. So if you agree on this, and let's bleed into number 5 for upfront contracts.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Upfront contracts.
Upfront contracts.
This could be at the beginning of a sales cycle, could be at the end of a sales cycle, could be at the beginning of a meeting, could be at the end of a meeting. But it's just saying here, like to the tone of like qualifying, it's like, okay, Mr. Prospect, you have X amount of money to solve this problem here. It's a priority item for you, so you're going to make the time for it. You're the decision maker on this, so we're good there. There's nobody else we need to loop into this. So you can sign on the dotted line that I present you. Since there's a good fit, I'm going to go internally and get approval for XXX, economics for you. Okay, if I get approval for that, are we going to be good to move forward here? And that's an upfront contract. And if they say yes, which we'd love them to say, yeah, that's great.
This is a great
You go
point.
do it.
Yes.
But if they say, and then you're like, well, wait a second. Okay, let's dig into it. You start asking more questions. This could be taken as an objection in a way where they're like, maybe not. But like you think that the conversation went great, but then you ask them that question and you're like, well, maybe not, because they're not really ready to move forward.
Right. No,
so
yeah.
I take accountability for that. That's on me as a sales professional. So there must be something that I misunderstand, because you have the budget, you have the time, you have the priority, you have the fit. So where are we missing? And he's like, well, look, I wasn't, there's actually this guy we got to loop into. He doesn't come in the office much. He works at a different office there. He travels a lot. It's really hard to get his ear, but he does.
I can't make any sort of a decision
I really
without
can't
him.
make the decision.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so that's fine. So, what do we need to get him on board? Like, you see,
Yeah.
Again,
How do I get in front of him too?
Yeah, like that. So upfront contracts, don't do anything. Don't even go into a meeting. Like, before a meeting, you'll say, this is what we're going to talk about today. Does that sound good to you? And if they're like, oh, I also wanted to cover that. Okay, great. And then the goal of the end of the call would be this. Like, this is where I kind of want to get to with you. Does that sound like what we're looking to accomplish today? Yeah, sure. Okay, let's have a conversation. You know what I mean? So just those upfront contracts along the way where you're qualifying, establishing buy-in. Qualifying, establishing buy-in. So that when you get to the contract presentment stage where they're ready to sign on the dotted line, there's no surprises. You know what I mean? They're not going to go, oh, we'll think about that. Let me review this a little bit more. It's like, if you do your qualifying right and you establish a good fit, it's going to be an easy sales process, and you really shouldn't run into those objections where people are just trying to get you off the phone or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you already know it's a good fit. They have the budget, time, whatever. You've done all the questions, done all the uncovering, the digging into their problems, blah, blah, blah. So that's the last point, is establish those upfront contracts throughout your process.
I thought, as soon as you started mentioning this, I thought you might mean like getting a yes, I guess, upfront in a sense, to kind of move things to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, you can. That's part of it too.
Is it? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, because you're agreeing on next steps. Like, after, it could be, like I said, you could talk about what's going to happen during the meeting, before the meeting. You could agree on the next steps after the meeting.
Yeah.
You could agree later in the sales cycle on there being a good fit. You're both ready to move forward. Time to get the contract out, put pen to paper. You could agree on that. So yeah, you just agree on next steps, agree on what's going to happen next. Is really what it is in its simplest terms.
At my last position as a loan officer with hometown lenders, one of the things on our team that was very important for us to ask, at least that's what we stressed, when we would go on a loan estimate call, which is like you get pre-approved, you go out with your realtor, you search for a house, you get something under contract.
Okay.
We issue your initial disclosures. Okay. I'm going to send out all that information that you've seen before because you just recently bought your house. Your loan estimate. I'm going to sit down with every single person that I'm working with to go through every number on their loan estimate so they know everything that's on that page. No surprises.
Full transparency.
Yeah, all full transparency, because I don't want anything to happen from that point on to the end where there's going to be anything that's going to, one, piss you off, or two, come awry and screw the deal up. I want either, to your point, I'm going to get that no as quickly as possible, or we get the yes, boom, we just wait for the appraisal to come back, and then boom,
we're lockstep moving forward. We're good to go. We're locking elbows and walking together. There's no cat and mouse game here. We're ready to rock and roll.
Exactly. And with that transparency, and at the end of that call, the line that we would usually use is there anything preventing? Now that we've gone through all this, does everything look good? Yes. Have I answered your questions sufficiently? Yes. Great. Well, now that those things, I've sufficiently answered your questions and everything looks good to you as it's laid out in this loan estimate, is there anything preventing you from using my team and I as your lender moving forward to get this deal closed up for you? Because at that point, they can still shop. They can still shop up until the closing, really. But if they say yes to you up in that point, like, is there anything preventing you from yada yada using us as your lender? Yes. Okay, what are those items? And then you can either speak to those items, you're bringing those objections right to the surface, or at least you know that you're shopping with somebody else, and maybe you got to play a little hardball, start competing with somebody else, maybe get them a little bit of better deal if you can. But if they say no, there's nothing. I think absolutely we'll be able to work together. I would love to use you guys. You've been awesome so far. Use you as our lender until this thing closes up. And now you've got that initial yes, and because it's essentially shaking somebody's hand.
Spit shake,
Yeah, and somebody, once they make that initial yes or handshake, they don't want to go back on that because it reflects on their character. They've already made kind of an agreement. So I think a lot of times, and I know it's a sales, I don't like to use the word tactic when it comes to sales, but a strategy that a lot of salespeople will use is getting as many yeses as they can until it comes to the final close. Because honestly, the final close for us is the day the property closes.
That's true.
And for you, probably the day that I'm sure there's a contract involved that's signed.
There's a contract that's signed, yeah. And there's other components after that, but for my sales cycle, day the contract signed.
Do you find that you'll try to get yeses from individuals prior to that so that it kind of leads them easier into the next yes, which leads them easier into the final yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want them signing the contract to be a complex thing. And sometimes there's like legal red lines because we have these contracts. So sometimes companies, because they got to make sure that everything's good from a legal jargon perspective, they'll have to redline things. But a lot of times that is an afterthought. More or less what you need to line on is like the CEO or the decision maker who's agreeing to sign the contract once the contract is in a spot that, once both legal teams agree on it, whatever. That's really not relevant to the conversation. But again, in my specific sales cycle, there's some nuances. But when it comes to signing the contract from a business perspective, from a relationship perspective, we're in lockstep on that. Like, we're not going to get there and then have somebody think about it.
Yeah, right.
Like, no, once this is ready to go and the contract's ready to be signed, he's going to sign the damn thing. We're good to go.
Dude, I tell buyers, like, honestly, I want the day of your closing, other than the excitement of buying a house, I want it to be the most boring day of your life. I want you to get to that closing table and see, I've already seen these numbers 50,000 times. No surprises.
I've
already seen these numbers. I know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Just sign the damn paper, go get your keys, enjoy your day.
I want them to know everything, get the keys, move all that stuff into the house, start, moving things around, all the fun stuff.
Have fun.
I want the financial stuff. I want that to be boring. I want you to get in that closing and sign your name for a half hour to an hour.
Because you've already done it. You've already looked at all this before.
You already
You're
know.
You're good to go.
You already know everything.
Sign the papers. Get the hell out of that lawyer's office.
It's so important. So to me, what you said, that's what that means to me is having those. What was it? How did you put it? Getting those
upfront contracts.
Upfront contracts. Yeah.
Yep. And that's, a lot of this stuff is one of my favorite guys is David Sandler, among other books too, sales books. Zig Ziglar is another one of my favorite authors too. He's got a lot of good sales stuff, but a lot of sales is just these soft skills and some strategic management things as you go along, like qualifying your prospects and upfront contracts. But nowhere along the lines here are we talking about how to structure something so that like it's going to be very persuasive to somebody. Like there are little sales things you could do to more effectively communicate, more effectively uncover problems, ask better questions. But again, you're just trying to establish a good fit, trying to really understand the process. And again, to start from the top, it's like you don't take things personal. You have good time management. You listen. You qualify your prospects, and you establish those yeses along the way. Do that at scale. You're going to be fine. You're going to
do it at scale and consistently, and you're going to succeed.
You're going to crush it.
Dude, that perfectly wraps up those 5 steps that we have here. I'm very happy with that. I do have other topics to go into, but we've been going for an hour and a half here now, Austin. So I'll leave it up to you.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we can certainly. I think it would be cool. I'm gonna save these other topics that I definitely want to ask you about, and we can kind of lead them into the next one. I would love to have you on here again for sure, dude. This has been so awesome.
It's been a lot of fun to talk about this stuff. I'm definitely down to do another one. For the sake, I guess, of this conversation, we wrapped up those 5. We put a bow around it. It was really cool to hear your side of the story too.
It was cool to hear yours.
Because a lot of them were pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Said a little differently.
But we have different takes on them.
It's
different industries,
it's
different
really
takes.
The same tone, the same foundation, and it goes to show you if you know how to sell, you can sell anything.
Right.
You just have to understand your industry a little bit differently and whatever. But there's foundational skills to being successful.
For sure. Well, we'll wrap it up here then. Thank you so much, Austin, for coming, and thank you for the beautiful cover that we have on the podcast now. I love that. I make it the thumbnail for the YouTube for the YouTube podcast when I post it. So that'll be up there. Other than that, we'll definitely have you back on soon. I thank you very much for coming on, and we will see you next time. Peace out.
Yeah.